Hey, just a quick note on this episode. Steve is a drummer, and he was frequently tapping on the table, which added a number of thuds to the recording. So you will hear those throughout this episode. Thanks for listening. Hey, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. I'm Chip Shell, your host. And today, our guest has played in some of the most iconic bands in town, including Ruby Port, Reel to Reel, of course, the Snowmen, Dirty Looks, ATV, Mr. Gone, Wanted. You played with Donnie Iris. Steve McConnell, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Chip.
Yeah, so first of all, you told me that your nickname, or at least one of them, is Animal.
Yeah, I think that stems from the fact that we had it was almost like a 3D virtual comic book visual, and we finally polished up the Snowmen. For a number of reasons, I wanted to maintain anonymity. I like the thought of being able to be that thing on stage, but have nobody recognize me off stage. And quite often the road crew would say, "Hey, I'm Animal. I'm Steve. I just took my makeup off."
Oh, right. They
would basically luck out. And I liked being anonymous, so I thought, well, I need to dump my real name. So early on, because of my antics, somebody said, "You look like Animal in the Muppets." And I thought, that works.
All right, and yeah. Well before the Snowmen, of course, I wrote down Ruby Port. Was that your first band you were in?
Well, I vaguely remember being 14, and a country western band had got my number, I think, from the musician union. This is when you
had to be in the union. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, back then.
And they just wanted to know that I could do a shuffle and I could do a 4 on the floor, and it was steady. And I remember my parents drove me there and waited till we were done. God, it was late at night in the station wagon.
Where was this at? What was the
I don't even
venue?
remember. I
Okay.
just remember it was a one-shot deal one night. The drummer was drunk or in jail or something. And then pretty much nothing. And then this guy, Joe Dauber, I auditioned for his band, Orange Norbert. It's kind of like Orange Sherbet, but Norbert was like an elf or a...
Got it.
And all we did was Grand Funk Railroad and Black Sabbath. That was
Wow.
it. And I knew all that stuff cold, and I wasn't necessarily only into that at that point, but I had learned most of it between 67 when I started playing and whenever. But
right.
It was fun. I remember playing on the stairs in the middle of the Boston store. That's where I met Buddy Pouton, and I think Ronnie Sedgey was hired us. We had to set up literally on the landing. No major application, probably a Shure vocal master.
Sure, right.
But It wasn't a bad band. I remember it actually sounded fairly good.
Orange Norbert. Orange Norbert.
Yeah, Norbert. I don't know if anybody even remembers that.
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
But shortly after that, my major mentor early on was Keith Pacheco. And he, I think, someone in that circle of people told me, hey, the Anthem Max is auditioning. And it was 3 like ace players. I think they were all music majors. Bob Sadowski, Brian Fells, and Louis Ursevic. They were all like heavy duty. I mean, they could play, they could sing, they all could read music. And their drummer, ironically, had got arrested on pot. And I don't know if he did a month or a day or whatever, but he was unavailable to do gigs, so I came in and I still had the old red Sparkle Edward kit. And, I got the gig right away.
What year is this, do you think?
This would have been before Ruby Port by at least a year and a half. Well, probably I was 15 or 16 when I joined, but it didn't last that long. But I remember one of the rehearsals, there was some cynicism because I remember one of the guys, I don't want name, he was very cynical. And he said, look, we're never going to make it. He goes, there will never be another Beatles. He said, if you think you have a career and you're going to get rich and famous and get a record deal, he goes, the odds are more likely you'll get hit by a truck. And I wasn't deflected whatsoever. But I remember Brian came in when I was setting up for rehearsal. This is later on after we've been together for a few months, and said, hey, you got to be cool about this. I forget how he put it, but there is another opportunity. Would you go with me to the Calabrese Club? He said, Dickie Buckle and Angelo Natali are forming their own band, the Cows. And he said, we have a shot at getting that gig. And I thought, it's top 40. I thought you just went up and played 2 sides of the Cream live album and then people would pay $100 to listen to you. And I was totally naive, probably still a little bit. But
well, you were still 15 years old or whatever, 16 years old.
And so I went with him, and I had hair down almost to my backside, and we went in and sat at a table. It was a real smoky nightclub, people all 10, 20, 30 years older than me. And the band all had matching outfits. They had 4 people playing horns, plus keyboards, bass, drums, guitar, and then 3 people that sang out front. Jeannie Kaminsky, the legendary Paul Yocklin, and Paula at the time was not doing the whole night, but she'd come in and it was a real feature. And I mean, she was just phenomenal. I mean, she could have been from Chicago and still would have been one of the best singers there. She just happened to be from Erie. She looked cool. She was natural. She was very unaffected, and she could just belt stuff out. And I'm up 5'5". I think she was probably 5'3". And I was very impressed, but it was clear that she was in college. So she would come in and maybe do a set earlier in the night and then leave, maybe an hour and a half.
And all these guys and gals are way older than you.
Yeah. I mean, the youngest guy was probably Nicky Nardo, maybe Paula, two or 3 years older than me.
And there was no like, hey, this kid is too young for us. I mean, to replace Ange.
Well, there's almost none of that. In fact, I don't know what was discussed before I got there, but nobody really knew of me other than Brian Fells. And Brian was like the Eric Clapton of Erie. I mean, he could play these very tasty solos in any idiom, and he could sight read. He went to Berklee School of Music, very well trained, and he was just amazing. And when we did any of the repertoire for like Eric Clapton or we even did Stairway to Heaven, he just nailed it. He had a Les Paul, and he was one of these guys. It was all his fingers. He could get the tone out of the guitar and really just make it sing.
Right. And
he and I were friends from playing together, and we basically were off at the gig. I remember they kept calling off tunes. They did Soul Sacrifice, and I did a drum solo,
This is your tryout with them?
Yeah, I mean, I probably did 3, 4, 5, 6 songs.
Okay.
And nobody was like intimidated because Angelo knew he was leaving.
Sure.
And I already knew who he was, much older than me, and I always wanted to have the left hand that Angelo had. As Keith used to say, you got to work in your left hand, listen to Angelo.
Oh, okay.
Most of the guys in town that had a high level of skill took from either Flip Bellotti or one of Flip Bellotti's students, like Johnny Baraducci or one of those guys.
Okay.
And I remember C.J. Bry, Jay Lewis had taken from Flip Bellotti. So that's who
you took lessons from?
Yeah, and it was like a 3-year course. If you survived and finished it, you had a good preparation to not only be able to sight read, but a good sense of meter and a number of other things. So here I was taking Angelo Natale's chairs, somewhat intimidating, but they all were,
understanding.
They kind of
accepted you,
made a big fuss like I was a big deal. And I really had a lot of technique because I had no social life for about 5 years. I just stayed at home. This is the baby boomer era where they couldn't fit all the kids in McDowell or Westlake, so they had shifts, and I got home around 12:30, and all the adults in the neighborhood were gone. It was like meant to be. I could practice 4 or 5 hours until I had to quit. That's all I did.
And you took lessons for how long? 3 years? I
had one teacher for about a year, Ralph, I'm trying to remember his name. He was the band director at McDowell.
Okay.
He had put my name in. You had to get on a waiting list to get in to see Flip, and then if he thought you weren't working hard enough, he'd literally throw you physically out of the room.
Wow.
I watched him. I was sitting with my sticks in the book waiting my turn, and I heard this argument ensue. It was mostly Flip, and this kid, at first the sticks came out, cling, and hit the wall on the other side when the door swung open. And then the book, and then the kid.
Jeez. Where was the studio?
It was when Markham's Music was on 11th Street.
Oh, okay.
It was down in the basement.
Gotcha. Right.
And I used to hang out upstairs before and afterwards. My parents would drop me off and pick me up. And that's where I met Keith.
And that's where you met Keith. Sure, right.
And I brought my guitar player in at the time, and we were struggling with this 7th grade level band, and I just started. I was 12, and the guitar player was a nice guy, but he just wasn't. It's a mixture of effort and talent.
Sure.
And when I heard Keith behind the counter, not even plugged in, he had this black Les Paul. He was playing everything letter perfect. I could tell. I'm a drummer, but I knew when you played the right chord inversions.
Right.
It sounded right.
Right.
And not only that, he played the leads note perfect, and he was known for that. He was like a surgeon.
And again, not much older than you.
No, 2 years older.
Okay, yeah.
And he took me under his wing. He was my mentor and introduced me to Paul Gall and I lived not too far from Chuck Leone's house, and the Wall practiced in his garage. Years later, we ended up in Mr. Gone.
Right.
Paul Gall, Keith Pacheco, and Chuck Leone. Actually, that was probably one of the best bands I was ever in. It was probably the tightest band. And it was very organic because it was easy to play with those guys. Paul was very fluid and elastic in the way he played, and he followed you. He didn't push and pull you. And it was the only time I agreed to use electronic drums because he played with the guys.
Sure.
But anyway, Keith would drive me to see like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Yes, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, wow. So you're in Rubyport for how long?
Barely a year and maybe 3 months, something like that, because one night, a slow night on Sunday night, Bob Tome came in, and he was sort of a legend, and he had taken the chair from, of all people, Phil Kagi in Glass Heart, which is that's quite a task. And management, Quinn and Abel, they and Bobby had suddenly become the focus because if he couldn't save Glass Heart, they showed an interest in helping him with whatever he did to that. And I vaguely remember there was a United Artists deal that never really amounted to me doing anything or recording, but we basically started. I remember things were so bad at one point, we didn't even have milk. Dave Streeter, the keyboard player, and I were cooking little Kraft macaroni and cheese boxes with margarine only. And then I would thumb home or get enough money to catch a Greyhound and just eat everything in sight.
So you were playing in Glass
Heart? We lived in Cleveland.
Okay.
And that lasted in Cleveland for a little over a year. It was called Ma Brown.
Oh, okay. So you left Rubyport, went to Cleveland, played in Ma Brown, which I've heard of.
To backpedal a little bit, he came in one night, and I knew who he was, but they had him sit in, and he just started calling off tunes, and I was playing. What I realized pretty quickly was he was auditioning. He was sizing me up. And then he offered me the gig and said, look, you got to audition. I said, can you get to Cleveland? I said, sure. And I had a bag of cymbals over one shoulder and I think a box of sticks and a snare drum.
And you're in high school?
Yeah, and this is back when it was relatively safe to hitchhike.
Oh, gotcha.
I hitchhiked to Cleveland,
Oh, geez.
got the gig, came back, and then they sent the truck a couple of weeks later, and I gave them a notice. It was sort of considered a gentleman's agreement that if you left a band, you didn't just leave, you gave 2 weeks notice.
Gotcha, right.
And I was all excited. I thought I would make it. They brought the truck in. It was pretty good size, like a 2-ton truck. The sound man, Phil Wise, and maybe the bass player picked me up. I threw my mattress in there and just a bag full of clothes and, of course, my drums, and that was it. That lasted about a year and a half. And I remember it was miserable because we were a little too esoteric for a commercial band.
Ma Brown.
Yeah, we didn't do anything you could dance to, basically.
Gotcha.
So it didn't get on its own legs based on the songwriting, although the songs weren't bad. We ended up not even recording them until we came to Erie and reformed with Bob Seaman. Dave Streeter, who was from the Cleveland area, came with us. And we added on Mike Goodwin, who was amazing tenor sax player. And he could play keyboards, a little trumpet. And that was a pretty damn good band because we had Dave Streeter, who was classically trained, Mike, who could play horns or synthesizer or whatever, and then Bob was on bass, Bob Tome was on guitar, and myself. And
you're still called Ma Brown?
Yeah, we were still called Ma Brown. At one point, they were called POE. I think that was Bob Seaman's name for the band.
Right.
Piss on everything or piss on everybody. I forget.
All right.
Anyway, we ended up adding Paul Gall at some point, but by then David Streeter had enough, and he went back to Cleveland. And at one point, we toyed with having Paula in the band. You can see that picture.
Yep.
My wife finds all these things on Facebook.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. We'll post some of those in the episode for sure.
Yeah. It's charming to see that stuff now, looking back. But there was also an effort to put something together with Bobby Berger, and we were going to call it Tone Burger.
Okay.
Just the three of us, and then have Paula sing as well, or just the three of us standing alone.
Gotcha.
And I thought that actually sounded pretty good. I remember rehearsing downstairs in the old Anthony's nightclub, which was like
where's that?
1 block east of State on 11th Street, maybe, or somewhere around there.
And you never were a singer?
Well, I never actually was a singer, even though I came out front and just said, I'm not a singer, I'm a song stylist.
Okay.
I tell stories.
Okay.
To get around the fact that I clearly had no vocal skills.
Gotcha. All right.
And Paul Gall used to say, we don't give him a mic for a good reason. I just thought that was pretty honest.
Yeah, there you go.
But, in the Snowmen, We'll get to that. This could be a very long story.
That's all right. So we're at Poe right now, or the potential of Poe, and we're still in the early 70s, right?
One thing led to another, and Bob had met Paula, I think, when we were home visiting our parents, one of the many Greyhound trips home to get a decent meal and do our laundry.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the end, because part of the reason we moved back to Erie might have been that. I don't remember the actual sequence time-wise, but we were back in Erie. He's dating Paula. Paula was in the first
version of Clockwise.
Yeah,
Jonah.
The first, I don't want to say Jesus rock, but
sure. Christian rock.
Christian rock.
Yeah,
that's the term I was looking
for.
And I forget if it was, I think it was Jonah first and then became Clockwise.
Right. That's correct.
And Angelo was in that band at that point. The connections with them we used to go to the Rex Humbard's Cathedral of Tomorrow studios, which is either Columbus or Cincinnati, I forget.
It's a big name.
Yeah, and we clearly didn't have a lot of funds, but we did 2 sides of a single.
Okay.
Long story short, when the pressings finally were shipped, Bob had already quit. Somehow we resurrected the band as Reel to Reel, but they already had Jeff Clare, Toon is his nickname, playing drums. And briefly, we had tried to get Marty Haynes, who was in Red, White, and Blueberry, to play guitar. And I remember the sequence of events, but the first we actually played with him was in Reel to Reel, and Dennis Cohen. It was more of a funk band. We wore matching outfits, a lot of...
seen those pictures, big lapels.
Yeah, synthetic... shirts and pants, and it was fairly jive, if you will. And I was getting tired of playing music that I really didn't have a strong interest in.
And this is all covers at this point.
Oh yeah, all covers.
You haven't recorded any originals yet with anyone?
The only originals we did were with Ma Brown.
Okay, all right.
So
Reel to Reel.
Yeah, I had a lapse in gig for at least 6 months. I forget how long it was.
And this is your life, right? I mean,
it was my whole focus. It's the only thing I did.
Okay, right. And so you've already graduated at McDowell.
Oh God,
73.
This is 75.
You didn't go into college. You just went to try to make it as a musician.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody has their regrets, but the only thing I regret the most is the loss of hearing from not wearing hearing protection. But nobody did that back then.
Right.
So eventually I was in tune, had gone over to play with, I think, Bob Berger. And I came in. I still had long hair. About halfway through the band, I cut my hair. In 77, there was a remnants of that band, Reel to Reel. Went from a 4-piece to end up being opera. But it was OPRA.
Right.
And had this keyboard player who was from out of town. And it was me, Marty, the keyboard player, played key bass. Because Paul Gall, by that point, had left for the Boston area.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it wasn't a bad band.
Mike Goodwin's still in the band.
Mike Goodwin's still in the band. Right. Marty Lee's still in the band from Reel to Reel and various incarnations of that.
And Ralph, you weren't in it when Ralph was in it.
Ralph came in late in Reel to Reel.
Oh, okay. All right.
This is after Cohn was gone. And he actually had a lot of potential, but he was so, like me, kind of hyperactive. He'd blow his voice out early in the night. Plus, it was the wrong material to be doing with a guy like that. Because we were doing like Burn off the Deep Purple album and stuff. I mean, just stuff nobody could possibly cover. But he actually could do it, particularly at rehearsal. But when you go out and do 3 1-hour sets or 4 45-minute sets, you're only going to get so far with a voice like that.
And where are some of the places that you're playing back then?
Oh,
I mean,
just
the Gaslight
Lounge.
What's the other
Bethwick.
one? Yeah, the Bethwick.
Places like
those were in the plazas, West Erie.
The White House in Meadville. This is back when you played at least 2 nights, if not a 2-week engagement. Couldn't get the guy on the phone. I crawled in the window, opened the front door. We took our equipment, locked it back up, and left. But 77 opera didn't last that long. I remember playing with the remnants of Reel to Reel, just sitting in when we were at what is now that hotel at 10th and Peach. They had a half-decent lounge there.
The Hilton there.
Yeah, and by the time opera was done, I was working at National Record Mart, and the 2 guys in the road crew for Red, White, and Blueberry came in and were soliciting me to join this new band that was starting, which they called Speed Queen. And they had a Speed Queen washer logo removed from one of the washers, and that was the logo.
So is this Bruce and Phil?
Yeah.
Or which Bruce?
Bruce Shampoo.
Okay, all right.
And Phil Thomas. And these guys are as good as they get.
Right.
Bruce was a tremendously tasteful light man. He didn't just flick everything on and off like Christmas tree lights, He would run scenes.
Right.
Like you're supposed to.
Which is a big deal back then.
Yeah. And I thought, you know what? I don't even know the other two guys I'm going to be playing with. I knew John Erickson. The big feature was they had a PA, a real serious PA, and good lights, and a road crew in a big truck. And I thought, I'm sick of playing lounges unamplified to people who really just want to dance when I could be in a rock band. And I knew what that meant. That meant you're not going to make any money, but you get to play rock and roll.
Sure, right.
And I got to the end of my rope with all the frustrations I'd been through. And I said, yeah, this sounds like the ticket. I remember going to rehearse at Dale's house on 26th Street, right across from Northwest Savings.
This is Dale Chadwick.
Yeah. This would be 26th and Peach, right around there.
Okay, all right.
And he had like an alleyway garage that they soundproofed and turned into a rehearsal area. Oh, okay. But it wasn't air conditioning. This was like an Erie summer, and it was brutal rehearsing in there. But the lead player was a real quiet guy, and Kevin Deaver. And him and Dale Chadwick were like Romulus and Remus.
So you didn't know them, and they're tight already.
Yeah, and Kevin was amazing. I mean, he's 19 at the time, and he was like Marty Haynes. Nobody knew him. Like I had a rep, but these guys were fairly new, and they had a couple bands that they'd been in, but they'd worked together as a team. That Kevin had basically shown Dale how to play guitar. I didn't know Dale could sing at that time.
Okay.
And I thought, these guys are serious. They're willing to rehearse hard. That's everything to me. I'd rather have average musicians that are willing to put the time in and rehearse than fabulous musicians who are dilettantes and are too lazy or too unfocused to put the time in. Because you can make a much better band with a lot of rehearsal. They were putting the time in. We had these 3 1-hour sets we worked out, which ended up being the very same sets when it turned into the Snowmen.
And the bass player at the time is Steve, it's John Erickson.
John Erickson.
Right.
And Frank Grotto was the singer who had been the singer in Red, White, and Blueberry.
Gotcha.
Long story short, I picked a fight with him because he was causing problems. He was not going to show up for a gig down in Washington, D.C. We were traveling great distances for $200 a night, and there was 6 people involved.
And this is Speed Queen at this point still. Yeah. All right.
And I could see that some remodeling was needed. And
there's no costumes, no nothing.
No.
You know, so this is a rock band. Yeah. It's not a lounge band.
A more eccentric collection of misfits you couldn't imagine, because we didn't look like a polished band. But John T-Tack booked a lot of our gigs. He booked Cheap Trick, a lot of bands out of Chicago, did a lot of high-end shows. And he came in one night when we were down to the point where we'd asked Frank to leave. Or should I say asked Frank to leave? And I'm like probably a foot short of him, but I poked him in the chest and said, look, you either get in the car and we're heading to Washington, or that's it. And here we are in Washington, D.C. the next morning, waking up at a floppy motel. Dale was forced to be the lead singer overnight.
Wow.
And boy, he did a good job.
Okay. And you had no idea at this point.
Yeah, I mean, things were happening so quickly, nobody could say what was going to happen from one day to the next. And there was a lot of nail biting and chain smoking because it didn't look like this was going to last very long.
Right.
But musically, the band was very polished. Okay. I was proud of the way we sounded. We had a good PA, so you could really hear what we sounded like. Erickson was kind of not verbalizing it, but I could see he was going through some decision making. And
he was the oldest guy in the band, I would imagine, at that point, right?
Yeah, I think so. He was probably a year or two older. I was the second oldest.
Right.
But Dale and I were roughly the same age.
Okay.
Kevin was, I think, 2 years younger than me. So I was 22.
You're all close, early 20s.
And that distance is nothing when we look at it from this perspective. Anyway, we played a few gigs as Speed Queen. And one night I had like white, I guess you could say, painter's pants. And one night T-Tech comes in. It just happened that Erickson wore this vest he often wore. No shirt, but just like a vest.
Okay.
But it was all white fur. And I'm in white. T-Tack goes, that's it. He goes, you all need to dress in white. He goes, you need to be like my other makeup bands. Because Kiss was huge at that point.
Sure,
This is early on. Kiss had only been around for 3 or 4 years. And, I'm not going to do that. And I remember Kevin said, I'm an artist. I'm not a clown. I refused them. T-Tack had a couple of his makeup bands not make it very far, and he had some leftover Stein's makeup.
Okay.
Stein's was the standard of the industry going back probably 100 years. I mean, grease paint.
So he gives that to you guys?
Yeah, so we met at Erickson's house. Erickson didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But me, Kevin, and Dale, I guess it's politically correct these days to mention smoking pot, but we got stoned and put the makeup on.
Okay.
And I wouldn't do it.
This is started
to put some on the face. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kevin came in. He did 4 or 5 variations. He put a clock in his face with in quadrants, and green in one square and orange, and
gotcha.
And then Dale did it. And I said, I don't want anything to do with this. And he said, we got to get wigs. You got to. And I went and bought from a Halloween store one of these little wigs. It looks like George Washington ponytail wig.
Yeah.
And it clearly didn't fit my head. And it was a big mistake. So I bought frosting tips and basically ruined my long hair. Turned into straw after 3 nights. So we finally got real wigs. That's a story in itself. But to back up a little bit, when T-Tac came in, he saw the two of us were wearing white and said, you ought to wear white wigs, white afro wigs.
So he even said, go with the wigs.
He said,
and everything.
Call yourselves the Snowmen.
Oh, he even said that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he said, call yourselves the Snowmen. And I thought, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with this. And this is the, Sunday, you quite often don't play Sunday. So that's like the first day of a musician's weekend. It's usually Sunday or Monday. And we're sitting at Erickson's house and everybody's contemplating this. And I'm like, oh God, why are we even discussing this? But T-Tac was a smart guy. And
he wasn't your manager, though. He was just
a booking agent.
Right. So he's kind of giving you
advice.
He
was doing fine. He drove a Pantera. Right. So he made the suggestion, and we didn't act on it immediately. But it was Sunday. I'll never forget. Dale's sitting on one of the upholstered chairs, and I'm on the couch opposite him, probably with Kevin. In
the garage?
No, this is Erickson's place.
Okay.
T-Tex called 3 or 4 times. He goes, I got you booked at the Lost Sea in Versailles, Ohio. And I forget the place, in Willoughby Hills, I think. And another one was in New Philadelphia, Ohio. It was like a 4-day booking.
Okay.
We had to do a Tuesday, a Thursday, and then a Friday, Saturday, all the way on the western border of Ohio, almost to Fort Wayne.
Okay.
Anyway, he said, I get you $400 if you put the wigs on and say you're the Snowman. And we were still bucking it. And Dale, in his perpetual confidence and bluster, says, if you get us $400, we'll do it. And he hung up the phone. And then he put the cigarette to his mouth. And I could see when he was concentrating or a little concerned about something, he'd get this squinty look in his eyes and pull the cigarette out of his mouth. And then the phone rang like 5 minutes later. You're booked. You're the Snowman.
That was
something like that.
Yeah, right.
We were all stunned.
So $400 was a lot.
It was twice what we were offered to begin with.
Okay. All right.
And back then it was probably like making $1,000 a night. Still, it didn't go very far.
Right, for going that far.
And the equipment, the gas,
right.
The road crew.
This is 70s.
This is late 77.
Okay, 77.
And it was still warm weather. I remember you stayed on cots in this one place, the one in Versailles Ohio. It was a massive place. It looked like a oversized chicken coop. It was octagonal. And they'd open up these segments, kind of like a honeycomb, as people came in. They wouldn't heat the exterior, the periphery. They'd only heat the middle part with the bar and the stage. And then as more and more people came in, they'd open up these sliding doors. And I remember the very first night I put the wig and the makeup.
Is it the George Washington wig, or do you have a fro now?
No, that didn't last.
Okay, all right.
And plus I had to either brush my hair back with a lot of water and put it in a ponytail and tuck it under, or just cut it. I ended up cutting it. And Lynn was pretty good at cutting her hair. So I said, get rid of it, cut my hair. And I didn't get a lot of attention.
Sure.
At least not up till then. And I noticed immediately when I put the makeup on, it was a license to be a clown. I mean, to be a jerk on stage. And there was no reprisals because you took it off and nobody knew who you were at the end. And I just fell into character immediately. Faces gooning around.
Right.
Kevin and Dale slightly less so, but when he turned all the floodlights of the stage light, it had an impact because everything was white. And it started to change things almost immediately because I'm looking at the side of the stage and there were cute girls staring at me. I said, wow.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Dale that first night, I think it was in Willoughby Hill, I said, Dale, I think we need to reevaluate how we look at it.
Yeah.
I said, clearly we sound great, but I said, now people are reacting to us and they're milling around the stage. They would stare at us. And then occasionally they'd, they show some emotion. And
you haven't got down the whole, everybody looking the same. Everybody's trying different stuff. And I've seen some of those early pictures.
We eliminated designs. We just put some color on our lips and our eyebrows. And that was it.
Oh, okay. All right.
We kind of just, without discussing it, did our own thing.
And Erickson's still in the band?
No.
Okay.
What he did is he refused to do the makeup. He refused to do the wigs. He took a capacitor, I think is what he changed the ohmage from the 1/4-inch plug off the bass, and it could plug directly in the board. He sat next to Phil and played.
So it's just 3 of you on
Yeah, and we might have already gotten plexiglass, because plexiglass around the drums had not ever been done before that I know of.
Oh, okay.
If anyone else had done it, it was barely on anyone's minds at that point. Now you see it all the time
Sure.
in concerts, and like on TV shows where they have a house band, there's always something around the drums.
Right.
And what it enabled us to do is be able to hear the vocals better with a small set of monitors. We didn't even have a bass rig. We just ran the top end so you could hear the attack of the bass. And since low frequencies are omnidirectional, that you could feel them in all directions, even if the cabinets aren't aimed at you, I could feel the drums great and the bass guitar.
Yeah.
So all we had on stage was 2 floor monitors and 2 very small Fender Twins. I think they're twin reverbs that have been modified. And boy, that changed things, because we had a very clinical mix. What was it Rick DeBello said? You guys have a real scientific mix, something.
Again, putting the emphasis on that crew that you had and how good that.
Yeah. And it helped because in these small venues, you didn't have all the cymbals and these marshals just overpowering the stage, and you're trying to get everything else above that. It was easy for Phil to really run a clean, nice mix.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always heard about you guys, is you had an incredible PA,
and I love that, because that was our lead card, if you would.
Yeah.
Well, that the audio not only was, but we'd rehearsed so much, we were playing these songs note perfect, or as good as you could with a live band. And Kevin was notorious. He'd even, if there was a little glitch like in Hot Blooded by Foreigner, there was a whip boom in the guitar. He'd do the mistake. Because that was on the record, and all the fret noises and stuff.
And you were playing what was considered then top 40 stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we did an hour of Aerosmith.
Oh.
And I did a drum solo right before the last song in the Aerosmith medley, which is Train Kept Rolling.
Gotcha.
That's how you got out of the drum solo and came into the last song closing the set.
Okay.
We did a few Zeppelin, we did Way, we did a lot of Ted Nugent. I mean, bread and butter rock and roll.
Gotcha.
Very commercial, but bread and butter rock. And people ate it up. At that point in time, Erie was almost devoid of rock and roll because of the drinking age. And the bump was stopping.
And disco.
Disco, funk music.
Right.
And we came in and people were reluctant to book it because, this is what's popular. We can't book your rock. We did a wet t-shirt contest at Altadonis. And I think he guaranteed us gas money. But Dale and I, in our typical dynamic duo, had got as cheap as we could afford at these posters. And by then we had Bink, who within a weekend learned the whole set, came in to rehearse. And then played the following weekend.
And agreed to dress up and wear the makeup.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Anybody willing to do it. And he just happened to be a phenomenal bass player. And he could sing like nobody's business.
Oh, okay. All right. He was from Oil City.
Yeah. And added a whole other layer to the band.
Right.
And he was like Paul Goll in many respects. He's very fluid. He followed me. It didn't matter whether my meter was perfect. It was tight.
Yeah, right.
That's more important.
Sure.
I remember we were playing in Altadonis, and people were just shocked. Well, what we did is we said, we can't fail here. We need a gig in our hometown, so on the road constantly.
Had you premiered in Erie and in the White Faces yet?
I think we'd not even played as a Snowmen. I'd been about a year.
So you're doing Altadonis for this wet t-shirt concert?
Yeah, and that's what people came in for. But the thing was, Dale and I got a stack, probably 1,000 black and white posters that were pretty good size. They were about 13 by 24. They were big.
Yeah.
And stapling them. And we hit every pizza shop, every record store, bars, and the windshield wipers, cars.
Sure,
and rock bars in Erie. Anything we do. And we did it every night for like 2 or 3 weeks.
I wonder if anybody has any of those posters out there.
I still have one somewhere. I know Dale does.
Okay, all right.
But it was amazing. We set up, we go downstairs to put our makeup. And I forget exactly how it went down, but somebody came down because we're underneath the bar in the basement. Putting her makeup fill. Somebody said,
and the poster had a picture of you guys in makeup. Yeah, okay, gotcha. All right.
And Kathy, my wife, is 8 years younger than me. She just remembers her boyfriend had seen it and her mom saw it and said, they just kind of kissed.
Yeah, right.
And I don't care. The thing was that we delivered. No matter what you thought when you saw the posters, it was much more than that when you actually sat still and came in.
Right.
And the thing is, it only took about half a song before you realized, I'm going to get my spot.
Yeah, sure.
Because we were all about that. Do not stink.
Right.
You know, you're on stage, you got to fight with your girlfriend, you don't feel well. We played when we were, walking pneumonia. We'd still show up and play.
And you were rehearsing nonstop?
We rehearsed every week.
So you're at Altadonna's, everybody's there, and this is the debut, and
I mean, there were beer cans up to my knees when they finally cleared the place out. And my brother had heard us play up at the Caboose in
Fredonia.
Yeah, how did you know that? I'm having a hard time remembering.
It's all right, I've been there.
Places, but God bless you. And he said, "Oh, you can't let Mom and Dad hear this band. You can't, don't let them come see this band." And I remember Bink refused to sing "Ain't Talking About Love" because the first Van Halen album had just come out.
Right.
And that was when they premiered. And I said, "Oh, we got to do at least 2 of these songs." And we came in and we thought Bink was going to sing it, and he refused to sing it. And I got really angry with him. It's one of the many times I got angry with him. And I said, "Well, I'll sing it." It's not like he's a great vocalist. He just kind of bellows, And then I wouldn't even do it at rehearsal. I just sat on one of the twin reverbs while they ran through the tune, and Dale played drums. And then I think we played at the Mark Restaurant, which was before it was called the PI.
Right.
I just brought the house down. And I remember Dale when we walked off, and I was scared to death. But once I got out there, I just said, goon it up.
Right.
Move around a lot, do a lot of Elvis pelvis moves,
So you were singing Van Halen.
Yeah, this is the end of the night. Everybody's already toast.
Okay, all right.
Who can tell I can't sing? Besides, I look like a cartoon character.
That's right, yeah.
It's a Van Halen song.
Right.
It's not like a Foreigner song or Steve Perry.
Yeah, right. That's classic.
And Dale goes, "You have a new secret weapon." He says, "We have to add a couple more songs," because I only did the one.
Did you end up adding more later?
Yeah, I actually did. Everybody Wants Some off of Women and Children for us.
Yep.
And then we did some AC/DC songs. We did Let There Be Rock. That was the one that I put a little show together. I pointed Let There Be Light, and the spotlight would come on.
Oh, yeah.
I would pretend I was a lion tamer. I'd have a wooden chair and pretending I had a whip in my hand, and then ride the chair across the stage like a hobby horse.
Wow.
And I would jump on tables and run around the room, and it kind of was the icing on the cake because we delivered this more quality product.
It was a show.
90% of the night, and then I'd come out and just jerk around, and people ate it up. I couldn't believe it. I knocked their drinks over, and they would applaud.
Animal took over.
That wasn't right. That I could get away with it.
That's right.
And some of these guys are big bruiser bikers, and they came into ridicules, and by the first break, they came backstage and wanted to be our security. "Do we have a Snowmen t-shirt?" And it was like, I couldn't believe the approval that band got that quick.
It went that fast.
Because we were fun.
Yeah. All right.
And, we were getting all kinds of odd forms of praise. And I remember a critic in town, Chuck Eschweiler, said Pillsbury Doughboys. But the thing was, we were clearly a target for ridicule. But the people that came to hear us routinely liked us because we delivered every night.
Sure.
And we played a lot of the songs they loved, and we didn't butcher them. We played it as good as a bar band can.
Right.
I was proud to be in the band. It was neat because you took the wig and the makeup off and just look at like any Joe Schmo on the street, which is very liberating, particularly in L.A.
So, how do you get to L.A.? How long had you been playing in Erie before you guys decide we're going to go?
Well, we became the Snowmen somewhere around October of 77. We weren't Speed Queen all that long.
Right.
And if you want a more detailed history,
Joe Miller.
Talk to the other. Right. Talk to Joe Miller. Talk to Phil. He was back in Erie now. Bill Miller.
Yep.
The bass player. He was the third bass player. Talk to Dale and Kevin. They're hard to get a hold of. They're still out in L.A.
And Bink didn't last long as the bass player, right?
No, he had some issues. He came from a really rich family. He was the only child.
Okay.
And he had a Porsche. He always had 3 or 4 basses. I remember literally he had a Rickenbacker.
Yeah.
And I made the guys do some moves. We needed to do something other than stand there. We don't look like a band that should be standing there.
Right.
So in Walk the Dog, I remember we did the shuffle to the left and then shuffle to the right. And he was a little awkward and was having problems with it. And he got so mad at himself, he grabbed the headstock all the way up at the end of the neck of the Rickenbacker, snapped it off.
Oh,
how do you do that?
I don't know. Those are heavy basses. Yeah.
And I remember Dale went, "I guess we're done rehearsing." He was a big guy.
Yeah.
And I actually picked a fight with him. What an idiot. But he'd caused some problems because he was a habitual liar, and I think he was a little intimidated being in this band, and now he saw that this is
serious stuff.
It's really a really good band. You don't want to fuck it up. But he would get drunk and stay up late and then come in and meet us at what was the place that sold the
Dominic, late night.
Peanut toffee, what do you call it? The gas station is known for candy. It was a chain of them. Stuckies.
Oh, yeah, Stuckies. Yeah. Yeah.
And we'd meet him there. He'd come in from Oil City to I-7 and meet me at the
gotcha.
Stuckies exit. And then we'd proceed on to West Virginia, wherever the gig was.
Okay.
Well, one morning he got there late and he clearly had a hangover. And he was trying to cancel the gig and the road crew was already 3 hours ahead of us, getting ready to set up. I said, you can't do that. I said, you're at Stuckies or you're in big trouble, something like that. And then I got in the car and he started saying all this shit. He's sitting behind me. And I remember suddenly we're doing like 90 miles an hour and everybody's freaking out, Steve, slow down. And I slammed on the brakes from 90 to a halt in like 10 seconds and the gravel on the berm and got around and he locked his door and I started pounding on his window. You get out of here. Yeah. Threat. But the thing was, if he had gotten out before he literally killed me, I would have put some hurt on because I was really mad.
But you still had to play the gig.
Yeah, and I thought, this guy's a threat to the band. We've already been through this.
John.
Grotto.
Frank.
Frank Grotto. Yeah. And Erickson wasn't an altercation. I just remember we were at the Willoughby Hills gig. I think it was the Something Light and Sound. Dale has all the calendars. If you ever get a hold of Dale, he could fill in all the gaps.
All right.
But Erickson plugged in at the board and refused to be a Snowman. And I remember I took him aside because him and Dale got into it. If you ever listen to anybody else and didn't listen to yourself, now's the time. Go out and a cigarette.
Yeah.
Let me handle it. We're going to lose everything if you keep coming at Erickson. He owned everything.
Oh, okay.
Erickson owned everything.
Ah.
All we had was our instruments.
That's right.
And the road crew's like, what's going to happen? So I said, John, clearly you're unhappy. Yeah. I mean, he usually didn't say a whole lot, but you could get him to talk. Reasonable. I said, look, what's the solution here? I don't know. He goes, I don't want to do that. I said, clearly. I said, well, what's the exit strategy? I said, we clearly want to go forward and you don't. I said, and we can't do it with nothing. I said, how about we buy you out? And he looked at me and goes, hey guys, amortize payments, make it a reasonable length of time so we can afford to do it. Roughly the entire pay for one night a month.
Right.
We're doing 8, maybe 12 gigs a month. We could probably afford that. And if we fail to maintain the payment schedule, it's just like a house, You
take the stuff back.
Take it back.
Right.
Yeah. And he didn't smile, but it was like a load was lifted off. And then I told Dale, I said, just stay away from Erickson. Because we did the rest of the 4-nighter.
Okay.
Then we did, I forget where we were when Bink came out to hear us. He drove quite a distance to hear us. We had cassette tapes of the whole gig. He took them with him at the end of the night, practiced probably night and day, and came in and was ready to rehearse. This was a Friday night, was ready to rehearse on a Sunday. And he had all 3 hours of material pretty much down pat. Wow. I was blown away. He was a damn good bass player. Yeah. So he got the gig. He was willing to do the stuff. So
then fast forward, you're in the car.
We're in the car and there's altercation.
Right.
We knew we had to get rid of him.
Right.
But there was no easy remedy. Well, we were playing at Out the Dawn as we were like, not so much the house band, but the premier band. And we had a contract exclusive. We had only play Out the Dawn at that point.
Okay. All right.
And we had free use of the place to rehearse and
nice.
Start writing material of our own. And it gave us relief because it was local and we could rehearse.
Right.
Much better than where we had started.
It's like the Calabrese Club.
Yeah, and Bink was a liability, but we didn't have any short-term solutions. But the house band was Wave, which was the 4 Tyson family members, the 3 brothers and Ann Tyson.
Right.
She's now married to Bob Ferrando Ford.
Right.
And Billy Miller was the bass player in the band. And I knew these guys. Yeah, I used to sit in with them. And Billy would come in when we were playing because he had the night off. And he'd have a six-pack of Miller Lite and sit there and listen to us. He wanted in the band. And we didn't have really anyone else that was a candidate. I mean, there were people we could have asked, but Billy had live experience.
Right.
He was more than qualified to take the gig. I didn't know he could sing, but he's a hell of a good singer.
Okay.
And so he was in. And I remember the ritual the night we shaved his beard off because he can't put the makeup on.
Oh, right.
And there's so much detail to that whole story. It's hard to relate all of it.
So Tony Stefanelli joins the Wave after Bill Miller. Probably.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
So they were still playing there too?
Oh, yeah. Wave stayed together quite a long time.
Right, I knew that. Yeah.
And they were getting top dollar in town. And they did 4 nights every week, either at Alta Dawners or the old Holiday Inn that used to be down near I-90. I forget where.
Yeah.
It's now,
but that was what it was like. You played 3-4 nights.
In the old days, you didn't do one-nighters. That's one of the reasons I packed it in a while ago altogether, was not only wasn't the money worth it, but you had to tear down and set up every night.
Right.
And if you're the drummer, that pretty much stinks.
Yeah, right.
Sucks, yes.
Yeah.
It's trying to be political.
That's all right, yeah.
Anyway, so Billy's in. We played with him about a year.
Okay.
We did Tech Memorial, the
farewell
gig.
Big farewell gig, right.
January 17th, I think.
Okay.
There's some black and white photos floating around of that. And I remember that was one of the most flawless gigs. We were really on our game that night. We didn't want to disappoint our hometown crowd. It was the first and maybe the only time people underage for drinking could come and hear us.
I was going to say, it was at Tech Memorial's gym. Like, who coordinated that? You guys?
Joe Miller.
Or Joe Miller probably did. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
I remember we used to do Thin Lizzy medley and in Jailbreak. One night Joe Miller would come up with a siren. We had a cop's hat.
He dressed up
had
as
a cop's shirt.
He did, yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
And we had our team and we got ready. The interesting thing is we've been writing material. We had tons of cassettes. Like when the deal with Alta Dawners fell through, for whatever reason, I forget. We were playing out at the Alternative, which used to be, what did they call it when I was a kid?
The Hullabaloo.
The Hullabaloo. Anyway, that was the Alternative at this point in time, which was late 78.
So you lost the gig at Alternative, meaning what? Like you weren't...
Well, there was a falling out and the agent who booked us there. Yeah, it was just Alta Dawners.
Yeah.
So we were doing the Alternative, and we used to stay after hours after we took our makeup off and rehearse till 4 or 5, 6 in the morning and then go home and crash.
Jeez.
And we would, because the vocals were quite often shot from singing all night, we at least had some musical arrangements and song ideas. We had one of those old cassette boxes about a foot wide and 2.5 foot long, probably 20, 30 cassettes full of stuff. Somebody stole it.
Oh, geez.
I don't know if it was devastating. So we had to start over from scratch. And what we could remember to start working on original material when we got to LA. We were still a cover band. We weren't playing any of our originals. And we had a nest egg. All we had was 10 grand. There were 8 people. You had Lynn taking care of wigs, makeup, setting up the dressing room. Lynn loved having that job.
And she was doing your makeup. So that's what I was going to ask you. Did you have to learn to do that? But she was doing that.
No, we did our makeup. It's just, we're like a fraternity or like a football team on the road. Right. The dressing room was utter chaos. It was just a mess. We had one plate glass mirror that was cracked, and we didn't even have makeup mirrors. And she bought 4 makeup mirrors, would set up the table. I mean, she organized things, and it made it easier for us to have a much more professional presentation.
What's Lynn's last name?
Lynn Stone. Her family's from Erie, and
right.
She passed away a few years ago. That was pretty traumatic for me. Anyway.
So she went on the road with you?
Yeah, she was one of the guys.
Yeah, right.
Literally. She was dating Kevin at the time.
Okay.
And she had a car. We didn't have a band car at first, so it was her car we always used. So we go out to LA with the CB radio, the truck, and the Lynn's car. Now, Dale had flown out ahead of time with Phil's girlfriend, who was from Erie. And she had a job with a legal firm out there who had shown some interest in talking to us if we wanted to negotiate a record deal. But we had to get some traction out there. So they flew out, found a house to rent. It was $900 a month when we first got out there. And we were living on like hot dog and cheese and macaroni casseroles.
Sure. And you're all living together in the, how about the road crew?
Everybody. One house.
One house.
There was a mud room. Somebody lived down there. It was like a false basement. There was a first floor bedroom, and there was maybe 2 other master bedrooms or whatever. But, one guy lived in the closet. I shared one of the front bedrooms with Bruce Shampoo. It was chaos.
I bet.
But we had a unified front in that you really have to function as a team or you won't get anywhere. So we were all making sacrifices individually to get ourselves moved forward. I remember Rod Stewart had a quote, "We were living out of each other's pockets." In other words, Bruce needed smoke, so I had 10 cents and Kevin had 50 cents, and we'd throw it together. And
gotcha.
It was just enough to get a pack of smokes to get you through the week. And the Lucky Lager, the price was right. And we had a I think, a Ralph's grocery store right behind the wall at the back of the house. In Los Angeles, there aren't yards.
Yeah,
there's like 10 feet of scrub, and then boom, there's one of those tan stucco-looking brick walls, and then you climbed over it, and there you were. There was a grocery store. And Kevin and I used to go over the wall to get groceries. So I'm going over the wall. It sounded like you're breaking out of prison.
Yeah, right.
No, I'm going to get groceries. And we had no money. We went through 2 or 3 different managers, and we had a guy who was a real estate tycoon who put almost $300,000 into us inside of 6 months. He funded the video, which I think it was briefly on MTV. It got played a lot in the Erie.
Yep. You can still see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's funny. Yeah.
There's
so much we could talk about. What's that?
$300,000's a lot back then.
Yeah. The video only cost 11.
Okay.
But we would have our makeup on for 8 hours at a stretch.
Wow. Yeah.
But we got it done. It wasn't bad. It's funny.
Yeah. Right.
There was a scene where, Bill's just singing the song, Crazy, and Dale did the high backup vocals. And we had to wildcat it because the lead guitar was out of sync with the video, but we didn't have the money to do, Thriller, for crying out loud.
Sure. Right.
And Bill had to sit on the gurney where the camera was. And the love interest, he's trying to reach out to her, and he can't get his hands on her. All you can see his hands. Well, he's too big. They said, Steve, put Bill's coat on, because I'm not, the only thing you're seeing is my sleeves.
Yeah.
And I'm reaching out for the girl's breasts, not ever touching them. And she kept cracking up because I'm making her laugh every time. Finally, we got the shot.
And before that, you're playing gigs out there?
Yeah.
Anywhere you can get?
Well, we held off for quite a while because we didn't want to give it away and then be stuck with that price. So the nest egg was almost exhausted, and there was a place on Huntington Beach, it escapes me the name of it. And the manager, we met him, we came in, and he didn't have a video player. And I thought, well, this is LA. Everybody's got to have a Betamax.
Right. Yeah, Betamax.
I had a Betamax.
Yeah.
Nobody had video decks. This is LA. I thought the nightclub owners will all have one.
Right.
So we had to pull out our still photographs. And so that's how we had to pitch ourselves for our first gig. And it was at least a month in. My recollection was we got there mid-January. We didn't play the first gig till almost March.
Wow.
And we were running out of money.
Yeah, right.
Well, again, what t-shirt contest? Maybe it wasn't a wet t-shirt contest. It might have been the Chippendales review.
Okay. I don't know if that's any better.
Because there's this one guy, we became friends of his. He was like the lead Chippendale dancer. His name was Sweet Louie. He's a little guy, real handsome. So the place was full of women, and we went on after them since our show was fairly long. They did the Chippendales review, and then they were done after an hour, and then we did probably the whole show.
Okay.
Well, we just took the place down. Just took the place down. People were going nuts. And the bar owner, he loved it. So he gave us a fair contract. No exclusivity. We just booked there about once or twice.
Okay.
Because it caused such a shitstorm, we passed on all these agents that were going to book us, and they told us, no, you have to do a 48-minute set with a 12-minute break, and there's 5 sets. We said, no, these are shows. There's 3 one-hour shows.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't cut them up because they're choreographed and everything. You don't just splice them. And they all kind of wrote us off. And all they had is stills. They had no idea what we looked like. And we had audio tape that was good, but they all passed on us. And then I remember within a month or two, they all started showing up at the gigs and scowling at us, sitting in the front and scowling at us because they told us to a black boy. Club owners said, no, they can't do it. We'll book you direct. You guys don't need an agent.
Right.
Anyway, we took off incredibly quick.
What were some of the places you played? Big places?
Oh, geez. I remember playing the Rock Palace in Reseda, and either the night before or the night after, Pat Benatar was there, Golden Earring. We played the Crescendo. We played Gazzari's. We played the Troubadour. We played Whiskey A Go-Go.
Wow. I mean, Troubadour and Whiskey A Go-Go, I mean, those are
I remember
huge.
We were on the corner outside during the day. And who's the guy from Young Frankenstein with the googly eyes?
Marty Feldman.
He drove by in a Rolls Royce and waved. And we were like, oh my God, it's Marty Feldman. And we did a wine and cheese party with record labels. That's how you try to get interest. You do something outside of a club setting and do it by invitation.
Okay.
And the night before, I wanted to check to make sure that the layout was adequate so we could set up and do our best show. And Eddie Van Halen was sitting there playing piano with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And he said, who are you? I said, we're doing a wine and cheese party in a band called the Snowmen. Snowmen. He goes, you got any snow? Something like that. I think almost any kind of gig. We got into doing these marine bases, like the Port Hueneme, the amphibious base down in San Diego.
Okay, all right.
The Jarheads loved us.
Wow.
In fact, one night, a couple of them got so wound up and drunk, they were jumping off the roof of enlisted men. They paid us pretty well. And it was like a constant source of gigs.
Yeah.
Because those guys have to blow off steam, right?
Oh, right.
And we were the right remedy for that.
Yeah. Fun and rocking. So you played for a while. How long were you in LA?
We were out there for about 4 years.
Okay.
From January of 79. And I moved home in December of 83. So just under 4 years.
And you recorded the one album.
Yeah, we recorded one album, and we had most of the tunes for the second album done. By then, the band was dissolved.
Okay, all right.
And
what happened in the end?
Well, you'll get probably different stories, but rather than hurt anybody's feelings, I just said that for a number of reasons, when things aren't finally getting to the next level, there's a lot of frustration, so you end up doing a lot of finger pointing. And I will say that some people are more team players than others.
Sure.
I remember having a band meeting where investors just saying, look, it's gotten to the point where I'm not sure we can fix this. I'm not even sure we're as good friends as we used to be. I said, but why don't we hang on to the friendship while we can? I think we should call it quits. If you don't agree with me, fine. But I was sobbing when I said it, because I'd put a lot into that. And you look at, it was barely 6 years, six years and a couple of months. But the distance we came in, we were the number one band in Orange County the first year we were there. Not the second, the first year.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't use agents. We broke all the rules. We didn't do 5 sets. We did 3, take or leave it. And the club owners were tripping over each other to book us because we were a guaranteed sellout. You know, they'd hit fire code before we played the.
What kind of money were you getting paid at that point?
Not that much. We're still doing somewhere between $400 and $1,000 a night.
Right.
But we were more concerned with getting to the next level than lobbying ourselves as a cover band. And by the end, we had developed about a 60-minute live show. We had an RV to go on the road with because we had some interest in Texas, clearly Pennsylvania, West Virginia.
You're playing originals and covers at this point?
Yeah, a mix.
Okay. And the whole time you're living in the band house?
Yeah, well, we got to the point where we had a $75 a week salary, and our rents, my portion of the rent was covered. And I was living out there with my then fiance, my first wife, and Kevin lived with Lynn. Dale lived with his girlfriend. Bill lived with his wife. And the crew, I think, were the last ones that actually stayed at the band house. Okay. Kevin and Lynn and the crew were at the band house. So it was down to 4 from originally 9 people living there. Right. It was chaos when we had 9 people in that house. And I still think we could have probably gone a bit further. Because I remember Carrera Records, which signed Kiss, was interested. Linda Ronstadt's manager came in one night, and he was very interested and was going to hook us up with somebody. And I won't get into the sordid details of why that fell apart, but we could have conducted ourselves better backstage when those people came around. And I remember just rolling my eyes and going, this is not going well. This is not going well. But
so and then eventually things somewhat dissipate, and you and Bill come back. Is that it? And
Bill,
Dale,
for lack of a better description, was asked to leave the band. That was early in '83.
Oh, okay.
We auditioned a few bass players. We brought one on board, Dan St. James. We used to call him Dancing James.
All right,
Dan St. James.
Gotcha.
And it just piddled away. I mean, one night Dale come up and he had the wig but no makeup on, or just lip makeup on. It still kind of breaks my heart to think about it, because that was kind of my last shot at trying to make a lifelong career out of music, or at least being successful enough I could walk away and not be worried about ever having to work again. Yeah. That just was not in the cards. Right. Anyway, I saw the handwriting on the wall. My last stab at it was, I was back in Erie. I played with ATV. Maggie Flanagan moved out of town. Right. She's amazing. She was one of the 3 or 4 best vocalists I ever worked with. And she's in ATV, that version of ATV at that point, right? I remember she'd left and came back
Right.
Because I played with them before she was in the band.
Okay.
And then she was in the band again.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know, she had been in the band and then came back.
This is early 80s after you come back.
84, 85.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And her and I hit it off.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stuff, the other guys were kind of burnt out on playing, like the Journey tunes. I liked playing the stuff she liked singing.
Gotcha.
So we were like buddies. And she'd already made a decision. I remember she said, well, I'm packing up and leaving Dodge. And she did.
Oh.
And it broke my heart because I thought, well, without her in the band, we're going to lose a lot of our marquee. It'll be hard to maintain what we had going with her. So.
And Pat had left a while ago, right?
Oh, yeah. I never even worked with Pat.
Okay, all right.
When I came to Erie, they had
still
George Hizzuto on drums.
Right.
And he was asked to leave. I feel bad about that, George, but I needed a gig.
Yeah.
You know? And I was going through a bad divorce. I remember it was a miserable year, one of my worst years, because the humiliation of that band dissolving and having to come back to Erie.
Right.
And I grew a beard and wore a baseball hat. I put my glasses on without contact lenses so nobody recognized me. Yet people still did.
Sure.
Years later, when I was dating my current wife, I'd be in a grocery store and somebody stopped me and said, didn't you used to be Steve McConnell? And I'd look down at my shoes and go, yeah, I used to be.
Oh, nice.
something like that. I mean, imagine your heart just sinking down to your feet. That happened a lot that year. And
so it was around this time that you must have met Henrik, right?
Yeah. In fact, when ATV was pretty much done, Scott Kuhn, a very soft-spoken guy, always was, had got a hold of me and got me on the phone and wanted to start a band. And I wasn't sure about it. Well, I put the band together. It was the Early Rhythm Method with Bruce Bennett.
Bruce Bennett was in the band.
Tremendous guitarist. Right. Yeah, we had Kenny, who was a DJ at WJT at the time. I think it was WJT. He great singer at rehearsal, but he gets scared. He got stage fright when he had to play live.
Yeah.
And we started playing out, and he blew his voice out one night, and that happened once too often. So the sound man suggested I call Mark Rizicki, who I know from Easy, and Bill Miller, who'd been playing in Easy at the time. And they came in to help us get through the night, and we did all this stuff just off the cuff. We knew like 3 steps, Leonard Skinner, you name it, we just threw it together.
And Keith was in the band?
Keith didn't come in until Bruce Bennett quit, which was shortly after those 2 guys came in and we asked Kenny to leave, which is horrible. I hate firing people or asking them to leave. It's an awkward thing. At the very least. But it did fix a lot of problems having a rhythm guitar player who could sing, because Bruce really wasn't a vocalist.
Right.
And Billy, who was a great singer and a bass player. So it turned into a five-piece rather quickly. A couple times, Mark Rizicki wigged out and left town, went to California, came back. He did this 2 or 3 times. And the in-betweens, Marty Haynes filled in. A good lineup to do covers, and we mostly played the French Quarters because we were diametrically opposed to some of the hair bands at the time, like Friction and so forth. But it was also a liability in that a lot of what could have got us more money and more attention downtown would have been if we played the hair band music. But we weren't that kind of band. Right. We were more of a Leonard Skinner-y type band or whatever.
He played the Rook too.
Oh, yeah. We played all the rooms everybody else did. But I remember one night we were at Sherlock's, and Henrik Ostergaard came up to me. He was all in 19 at the time. And by then, I think it was mid-86. And he had a pressing, a copy of his album that he'd made in L.A. And there was a bass player who had gone out there with him. And they didn't have much of a budget. They couldn't even afford what they call 3-colored artwork. So it was a black and white album cover. And it's that one with a dog where somebody's pulling its tongue. Right, yeah. He was sipping on some Jack Daniels, which is what ended up killing him.
He's 19, though, at the time.
Yeah, he's 19, and he's in Sherlock. He had charisma, no question about it. And, it was pleasant to talk to him. So I after the gig, probably the next day, I put the album on.
Did you know of him at that point?
I didn't know who the hell he was.
Okay.
And Dirty Looks was sort of a non-entity. He was in a band called like Crossfire and this and that. Right. But the younger guys, his age and younger, knew him better than the older guys. Sure. And I'm kind of an old timer, even though I'm only, 29 years old.
At that point, right, yeah.
I put it on, and I could hear past the budget, right? he was doing some chord stacking, very unusual, like kind of Aerosmith would put a major chord on top of a minor chord. And they weren't like sloppy amateur penmanship. They were concise, little compact 3-4 minute tunes. Hard rock.
Yeah.
But kind of like an American AC/DC. And he had a very unique voice, like the same kind of a screechy but melodic hard rock. And I played it like 4 or 5 times in a row, and I went, my God, if this kid does another demo and clean up some of the things I'm hearing that you could improve on, simplify the drums a bit, get a little bit better production. So I called Keith and say, look, I don't think this guy has any money, but I'll cover doing the spec, whatever that was. And he and I went by ourselves. Now I remember
you and Henrik.
Yeah.
To TRS.
Boyd Baker did a little guitar, but Henrik, for whatever reason, wiped all of his stuff and did the bass parts himself, and the lead and the rhythm. And it was like if he knew how to play drums, he wouldn't have needed me.
Right.
And Keith is great to work with because he has really good ears. He has a good sense of what to do. And we're talking a Fostex half-inch.
Sure.
We knocked that off in just a couple nights, 2 or 3 nights, and we had a full album done.
Wow.
And I remember he came in with something, I forget what the original title was, but it was real fast.
But this was original stuff.
Oh, he had all the songs in his head.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't stuff you had already heard.
He literally knew what the whole thing would sound like. It was just, he was rather awkward representing it verbally.
Yeah.
And he had these horrible, junky cassette tapes he just threw together and he'd give them to me. He was like, I had to hear past what was on the tape.
Right.
We actually got more done when he actually plugged in and we ran through the songs. So we'd, run through a song 2 or 3 times and I'd say, I know you don't want to wear out or waste any tape, but Keith, why don't you just run whatever we can get through till we stop? And then I'd listen to playbacks, and that's where you could really tell what worked and what didn't.
Yeah.
And I had a good sense for what he needed. And we knocked that out really fast. There was at least 6 tracks done in 3 nights, and then a couple more later.
It's just the 2 of you.
Yeah, and a couple days later, he put the bass on and some of the vocals.
Right.
And one of the tracks I really liked, other than Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, I forget the original title, but he ripped up the sheet of paper and said, I'm going to rewrite that. He goes, I'm going to call it Ruby. And I'm like, what? That was the video he got on MTV.
Got it.
But I remember him doing the vocals. I thought, this kid's got like a natural sense for not only how to put a song together, but how the parts fit together. He knew what he wanted from me, which was really easy because I just say, well, do you want this? Do you want that? And then when I did something that was what he was looking for, oh, great. He'd actually take some of my ideas. I remember Tokyo. We are Tokyo tonight, which is a phrase from the 80s where you get to play Budokan because you've gotten to the point where you can feel the Budokan.
Gotcha. Right.
And all these really cool songs.
And he's young.
He's 19.
Yeah.
Keith was a little less enamored than me, but he agreed that the kid had talent in that. A lot of people go in the studio and they never get together, or they do these long guitar solos and there's no song, there's no chorus.
Gotcha.
They don't understand. He knew. He bought that song, or bought that book. How do you make it in the music business?
Oh.
It's been around for years.
Yeah.
And it was sort of his gospel. Long story short, I saw there was potential. By the way, I just sent you the picture of when we were a trio.
Yeah.
It was winter of late 86. And I had gotten to know Harpo and introduced myself to Jack Pyers. Jack Pyers played bass for Harpo. Didn't sing, and I got a bump of the recording on a cassette and gave it to him. And he was blown away. And he remembered the Snowmen. He said, you guys had a street cred. He said, people used to say, boy, when they move, you should see it.
Yeah.
And we became friends. And I said, look, this might be something you want to do. I said, I know you're heavily involved with Harpo, but you might want to check this out. So he calls me the next day after listening to him. He goes, hey, that guy's got something going on. So he drives all the way to Erie. And I remember it was like November and we had that first spit of snow.
Sure.
It was brutal cold. It was a Sunday. And Mary, who's assistant manager at Sherlock's, allowed me to come in and she unlocked. I fired up the PA. Rhythm Method had been playing there, but we weren't playing Sunday and we hadn't torn down yet. We went up and just ran through a few things, and it sounded amazing.
It's just the 3 of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jack just turned around and looked at me in the middle of it. I thought, this is remarkably good.
Yeah. And you're calling yourselves Dirty Looks?
No, we weren't actually a former band.
Yeah, you weren't really.
When you see this...
I saw that at the bottom it says Dirty Looks, I think, right in that picture.
Yeah, I just sent you this one.
Yeah.
Anyway, he... And I'd already left shortly afterwards for various reasons, but he used it to get promo until they had enough traction. They'd already had a couple of the people lined up to play drums and rhythm guitar, but we were going to be the band.
So aside from that time at Sherlock's with the three of you, did you guys play out?
I played three live gigs. One was at First Trinity Church, I think was the name of it.
Okay.
And
seems like an odd place to play.
Yeah, but Boyd and I, and I forget the John Lipinski, I think it is, bass player.
Okay.
And we played Rainbow Gardens. It was full of people.
Oh, okay.
And it was the only live recording I have of me and him, and we're playing Can't Take My Eyes Off You, and it doesn't sound bad.
Cool.
Somebody just had a cam recorder, a video recorder.
Yeah.
And recorded it. And it's on the internet. You can find it. It's
okay.
86. I remember we used my PA, my lights, my truck.
Right.
And it was pretty good.
Cool.
We had to do a couple Scorpions tunes, the Zoo and something else, and because we didn't have that much material. And we only played about an hour and a half, if I remember.
Okay. All right.
But there was one point when he called me from Carriage House Studios, which is a great studio in Connecticut.
Okay.
And the reason Henrik wanted me to drive all the way out there, and he'd been up and running now for a while. It was 87. He got signed. This is less than a year and a half later. And I drove up to Connecticut, and he hemmed and hawed. He wanted me there. You got to come up here. Because he wanted me to give him permission to use my tracks to trigger the drum sounds. Because the drummer they had, he may have improved since then, but the problem was I heard some of the tracks. He was all over the place with the meter. And he had to be kind of told what worked and what didn't. But my tracks had good feel, and they were done in Keith's living room. So at least half, if not most of that album is actually me playing that first Atlantic release and triggering drum sounds that cost a fortune. They spent like $4,000 on drum heads and a couple hundred hours of not getting a take they could use. So they just used my drum tracks.
Right.
And they might have done some splicing and editing, but he wasn't real happy because I had a tendency when I hit a backbeat to do feathering notes in between, just like Bonham and some of the greats do. And he didn't like that, so they gated it so that it would just be your typical strum and dirt. But the thing was, the feel to those tracks was from the chemistry in Keith's living room about a year prior.
Right.
For years afterwards, I would just do recordings and demos for him. I would literally help him get a demo so he could teach his drummer what he wanted on the next album. Every album he did, I did either the demos or actually played on it.
Okay.
And never got a nickel.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? I'm stupid, for one thing. But like Keith said, he wanted to preserve his legacy. He had talent, but he was his own worst enemy, as many people are. And he had done a number of follow-up releases, and Burnt Orange and this and that and the other thing. And I was already in cardiovascular school at the time, and he was using things I learned during that training, like droperidol was a neuroleptal anesthetic adjunct, and people would wake up claiming they saw three hooded men falling down the street, the feelings of dread. So he named one song Feelings of Dread, and the other one he named Droperidol because he loved that.
Wow.
It was dark, you know.
So you just mentioned that you are in school now, and it's what, the 90s?
Yeah, we've left a lot of gaps here, but basically...
Because you played in Wanted for a while, right?
Yeah.
Around 89, I think. And did
that last long? Let me backpedal a little bit. I remember right around the time I met Henrik, I could see that was going nowhere. The Stabilizers were getting off the ground. I really didn't know them that well. And George Hazuda had been a live drummer.
Right.
But the British guy, who was a left-handed guitar player, did everything with drum machines and basically digital equipment.
Okay.
And I remember after they recorded the album, came back here, and it was a big return to home premiere of their album. They were having a crisis. They're trying to get a sound check. They're in a ballroom down at that same hotel I mentioned earlier.
Sure. Bedrocks were opening for them, I remember.
And here they put, you know what the old Walkman headphones look like? A little piece of foam. And you can hear exterior noise, particularly if it's loud.
That's right.
They wanted him to the drummer to play along with a click track that had a lot of the stuff they weren't going to be playing, but they were using a cassette player to drive it. And any idiot knows you either use a digital recording or a reel-to-reel. It's got very rigid transport speed.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, it's going to...
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what it was. And the only time they sounded tight was when they did like 2 or 3 Police songs without the headphones. Wow. And they wanted me to fix this problem. I said, you need an amplifier. I mean, like a real powerful amplifier and some headphones with a lot of separation. So none of the outside noise is going to get through those phones, and he can hear what's actually on the tape. I felt really bad for Phil, the drummer, because as arrogant as that British guy was, he knew he needed help.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why they called me. I said, look. And then they wanted me to tune the drums, and I would do that. And I remember later, Dave Christensen had come to a gig and heard me. They never actually heard me play live, and I guess he was kind of blown away. He was there with Mike B and said, we made a mistake. We should have hired him.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. The rest is history. But I'd already made the decision that I was going to start the second semester, which is the January semester at Edinburgh.
Oh, okay.
And commute. And I was going to get a science degree. I knew it had to have something to do with biology and medicine. And then very quickly, by the end of that first semester, I said, I'm going pre-med.
Oh, okay.
And, I got the BS with the pre-med curriculum. I did it in 3 years. I have lapses of memory because I was toast.
You're how old at this point?
Well, 89, my birthday was in April. So when I started, I would have been 33. 50.
You're married?
I'm not married.
Not
I'm
married.
Dating.
Still dating?
And there was a lot of reasons other than Henrik himself. I didn't want to move away from Kathy.
Right.
And I'll admit I was one of those guys that wanted to hang on to my bachelorhood as long as I could. But the music business is so scary, and I was getting older, and I could see the handwriting on it all. I said, you need to just accept reality here and get a real job.
Well, you really went for a real job pre-med.
Yeah, I mean...
How much are you playing drums anymore?
I haven't actually sat down and played a kit of drums since I sat in with Chuck Leone's pickup band in late fall 2017, so 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But I quit playing regular gigs with Roger Montgomery about 7.5 years ago.
And before that, you played with Donnie Iris for a few years?
Yeah.
And that was during school, right?
Yeah, wow. It was probably the worst time to get the gig.
Right,
but
right.
I was determined to at least get the gig and hold on to it as long as I could. But once I started flying to New Jersey and back, it got crazy, and I was exhausted. And the course load, the pressure.
I bet. Yeah.
I mean, it's a pre-med student course load. Plus, I'm not just studying. I'm responsible for sitting on the seat and putting someone's life in my hands, even though I've got a senior perfusionist supervising me.
And did you get that gig because there were 2 Erie guys already in the band? I mean, they said, hey, let's bring in, we know this guy.
You don't get the gig unless it's a unanimous decision. Okay. And Donnie has the power of veto. Okay. And he's the easiest going guy in the world. Yes. I had auditioned once and had gone there, and it wasn't my idea. It was Kevin Bensing, who'd been on ATV, went with me. And it wasn't an ideal situation. When everyone else is playing loud, you got a drum kit. And depending on the room you're sitting in, you can't even tell that I've hit the kick drum, no matter how hard you hit it. It was hard to steer the band around. So I didn't get it the first time in 86. But when I came back in 90, I was amazed they did a cattle call, and there wasn't really any professional drummer there except for one guy, and he was really a fusion jazz drummer. And he didn't know what he was going to get into doing a Donnie Iris gig, because you have to play loud and be surrounded by loud.
Right.
Marty plays very loud on stage.
Okay.
That's part of the process, right?
Yeah.
And if you got a shitty drum monitor, you're shit out of luck.
Right.
Excuse my French.
Yeah. And Paul's in the band too at the time.
No.
No?
They still had Scott.
Okay. All right.
And I determined to just blow them away. And plus I'd been playing a lot more and been playing much heavier, because I adjusted my style when I came back to Erie to be a much heavier hitter.
Gotcha.
And I was blowing through sticks the size of a telephone pole. Half a dozen, maybe a dozen a night. Change my drum heads every other night. There goes $75.
Wow.
I was blowing through crash cymbals that were like $150 a piece, like one a month, 2 a month. But, shoveling asphalt all day long and playing gigs 2-4 nights a week, I was in good physical condition. That one picture you can see, probably the only point in my life where I was really...
You're ripped.
Buff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I remember it was really easy to break a drumstick. And you're hitting the hoop and the head, not just the head. So,
right.
And I already knew the material. I was well prepared the first time, but the second time 4 years later.
Okay.
It wasn't that long.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was. I went in, I knew the show cold. Plus, I knew where I could augment things, trail off the end of the song. And they had this one tune, my favorite tune to play from a drummer's perspective was That's the Way Love Ought to Be.
Yeah.
And that's Kathy and I's favorite song. That's the Way Love Ought to Be. At the end, they give you the da-da-da, blah.
Yep.
I sent you.
You sent me I'll put that on the
MP3 clip.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a bad recording for that time.
No, it sounded good.
You know, it was a loud gig.
Right.
But there's two versions of that. And you can go to the unofficial Donnie Iris site. They're both on there. But I think it was Shooters. It went real smooth. My tempo was a little fast, which is not unusual. But the chops at the end of the song really, you know, it came up. I was proud of that. When I heard the recording,
it did sound good.
Yeah.
You're right.
That's some hairy chops. There's just some really fast double bass work.
Yeah.
When I did the audition, I probably did the exact same thing. And Donnie stopped singing into like the fourth song. I kept calling up songs until they told me to stop, basically.
Yeah.
And everybody's like kind of grinning. Donnie turns around, holds his mic down by his side, and just grins at me, nodding up and down in time with the song, and just stopped singing. And I think, probably got the gig. And it seemed like it did. But I had actually driven Marty there, so I had to listen to every guy play before me and every guy after me.
Right.
Oh, they're in the middle of audition, like the second or third guy after me, and he's still playing, and Donnie walks out of the garage, comes over to the van and goes, "Hey, Steve." You know, he's Mr. Cool, you know. And
he's King Cool.
King Cool.
Yeah.
He goes, "So would you like the gig? I really like your playing." And I just, you know, it's one of those moments in time where everything comes together. The stars were aligned or whatever.
Right.
And all the way home, I was just warm and fuzzy. And
yeah.
Marty's sitting next to me. I had this old beat-up van we went there with. And I pull into Kathy's mom's house. And Marty jumps out and goes, "He's a cruiser."
Nice.
And she loved it coming to gigs. Because for a while, I was still finishing Edinburgh. I didn't graduate till 92.
Okay.
And I had so much going on. I rented my PA and lights to at least 2 bands. I had Mark Rizicki and a couple other guys, like sort of a part-time road crew, take the truck and everything just to try to offset the overhead of owning all that stuff.
Yeah.
And plus, I played in at least one band. The Leftovers or Rhythm Method, and then Wanted.
Yep.
And then I got the Donnie Iris gig. I still had long hair at that point, and I had to cut my hair to interview at Hammett, you know. And so some point late 91 or summer of 90, I cut my hair because 92 when I graduated, I had about 9 months before I started perfusion school.
So you were playing with Donnie at that point.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was the last year, 93, because they didn't play hardly all in 93.
I was going to say, they didn't play a lot.
Yeah, they were flying me back and forth. So late 92 through all the way through 93, they would pay for the airfare. I got the same pay as everyone to do the gig. And that kind of gig is where you want to be, even if you don't get rich, because you don't have to move your own equipment, set it up and tear it down. I could just saunter onto stage at sound check, and quite often they never did a sound check, but I checked the drums. And then you played maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour and a half, and you're done.
Yeah.
Exhausting, because you know it's a different level of performance, because those people weren't there for the drink special, or like I used to say, I spent most of my drumming career as background music for fertility rites.
That's great. That's a great quote.
Who's the drummer?
Yeah.
There's a drummer.
There's a drummer? Yeah. Right.
But you know, when you're playing like the Snowmen and Donnie Iris, people were actually there to hear you.
Right.
And it was a pleasure working with those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, Donnie is probably the easiest guy in the world to work with. And not being in that band broke my heart. But, you know, things happen. And I take a lot of that upon myself. But, man, I'm essentially in a med school level program, all kinds of stress on me. I don't want to blow the board exams. I did good on the board.
So you left on your own?
Well, no, I was asked to.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that, but I own up to it now. But who knows why? I mean, Donnie called me one night, and I was devastated. because that was right around the time I left Hammett at the same time. And I just had a dark period in my life after that.
Gotcha.
A lot of struggle financially. Plus, I just got married.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've come a long way. And, let's pause it there. How's that sound? Because
it's probably appropriate.
We have covered quite a lot over all those years of music. And, your life is totally different now anyway.
Yeah.
And thanks, Steve, for coming on to the Erie Music History Podcast.
Hey, and for those of you out there listening, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button on your podcast app. You can also listen to each episode within Facebook on the Facebook page that I created. Remember also that if you're looking for information on the current music scene in Erie, you need to check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast, which you can download like any other podcast, or you can go to twomanhappyhour.com. That's the number 2. Special thanks to my financial assistance partner, JPT Foundation. They have a great bingo hall up on West 38th Street that is also available for different events. Check them out at jptfoundation.com. Also listen to Chris and Julie Moore's Next to You radio program. You can find them at WQLN NPR 91.3 FM. So until next time, I'm Chip Shell. Thanks for listening to the Erie Music History Podcast. Hey, if you're still listening, here's my random free plug for this episode. Check out the Copper Carriage. It's an antique store at 1909 Chestnut Street. It's about 2 years old. Pretty cool place. They have some cool Erie things, lots of vintage stuff, and they occasionally have some really cool events that they put on in the building next to them with lots of different local vendors. So check out the Copper Carriage on 19th and Chestnut. See ya.